Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Everybody knows that we're throwing this to something that we recorded 2 years ago. You know, it says 33 years marriage to 35. And so they'll hear, and you don't even know this because I was previewing it to do all the editing. And that we mentioned going to see the twins right when it starts. And so that literally was recorded right about the time they were born.
Yeah.
So just this morning we were on the phone FaceTiming the twins because they just turned 2
years
today.
Old. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So
what a ride.
Yep. What a ride. Max in Georgia.
Yeah. And they
Awesome
got their
stuff.
little Lilo and Stitch, little animal and Belle.
And
cup and Lightning McQueen cup and Spider-Man.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, so what's going on in our world?
It's Thursday. It's date night.
Date night. Whiskey cake, baby.
I'm looking.
By the way, shout out to Whiskey Cake. Maybe they'll sponsor this.
Sponsor us, Whiskey Cake.
Also, shout out to, because I said last night we're going to be cheating on Cactus Canyon.
Oh
my gosh.
Yeah.
Shout out to Cactus Canyon.
We love it.
Did we talk about that already on a podcast?
I don't think so.
First time we went, like really long wait, but we've been going, trying to get there between 5 and 5:30.
We're old people.
Well,
so
if you can
early.
get there that early, you won't wait 3 hours.
That's right.
Got a great little patio in the back to wait. But man, if you can get there, and I will say this, no matter if you wait at all, last 2 times we've gone straight in.
Yeah, but we're cheating on them to go to Whiskey Cake.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. The new one, it's a new one, so it's kind of hard to get into. So that'll be fun. I've enjoyed having our Thursday night date nights. I look forward to it all day long.
Yeah, me too. And well, I was going to go back to, since we want them to sponsor us, Cactus Canyon.
Yeah.
So when you do, even if you wait, when you go sit down, man, the food comes right away, like fast. So the service is amazing. Food is amazing. So I did throw that in there. But date night at Whiskey Cake. And just to kind of timestamp this for people. So what's going on in our world are the New Jersey drones, and really drones all over the world right now. It's crazy, huh?
Yeah,
What do you think
we
about
go
that?
out every night and we just look up at the sky.
Looking for the drones.
See
in
what
Wise
we
County.
see.
They are everywhere.
We thought
People
we saw
them in
one.
Decatur a couple nights ago.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know. I don't get it, but I know that they're all over the place.
Yeah. Seen a lot of theories.
Undeniable.
Most people are going to lock in and believe a theory that makes them feel safe and not so afraid because nobody knows. I've heard a lot of different plausible explanations and really things that make sense, but you never know. Again, I think we gravitate towards the ones that make us feel a little less afraid and more certain.
I hope they don't crash with Santa's sleigh on Christmas.
I do too. That would be tragic.
Wouldn't that be bad?
Yeah. So up on I saw this the other day on social media, up on the housetop, somebody said up on the rooftop, reindeer paws, out pops good old Santa Claus, blah, 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 or whatever. And then down through the chimney with blank Saint Nick. What is it?
Old Saint Nick.
Is it old or good Saint Nick?
Santa Claus.
Oh, Mandela effect. Everybody look it up.
I think it's
And then
good Saint. It's good. It's good Saint Nick.
But I said old too. My brain
It's
was
good.
going.
I had to
flipping
really
back
get in
and
the
forth.
rhythm. It's good Saint Nick.
All right.
That's crazy.
Well, you ready to do a little podcast?
I'm ready. Let's
All
do
right.
it.
All right. So on 3. You ready?
I'm ready. Had to remember, what are we doing? Okay.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome to Long Haul Marriage.
Got to see the twins over the weekend.
Yes.
And Keith Rue got to see Charlotte May, our
We
newest
did
grandbaby.
the tour de babies.
Tour de babies.
We drove around. I told Chan this morning, I said, I'm so grateful that we don't have to hop on a plane to go see our grandbabies. We just can drive
That a blessing.
35 minutes one way and like 50 minutes.
Yeah. people, I guess now we realize what a blessing it is when, you've got that relationship with your kids. We talked about that in week one and how now they like to be around us, and we get to see our grandkids at least once a week. And Rue spends the night with us, usually almost every week. So it's just
Y'all got to
just
fly a
great.
kite.
Got to fly a kite.
And then
we saw what happens when you let go of a kite once it's up there. And yeah.
And then remember you had to go, we found it like way far away. And it was kind of at a Breaking Bad
meth house.
Yep.
So
that there was a sign.
No trespassing. Beware of dogs.
No, there was a big metal sign that said, "We don't call 911. We don't dial 911." And there was a picture of a gun. I was like, he is. So I remember you walked out of the truck and you put your hand up like, "We come in peace."
Both hands up. I'm walking towards the door to knock on the door. Hey,
just here
for the kite. Just here for the kite.
Oh, that was funny.
Anyway, yeah, it's good stuff. Well, so let's, you know how our time goes. So let's just pick up. And honest, I think sometimes we'll listen to the end of where we ended. We didn't get to do that today. So not entirely sure where we were.
Did we
I remember you
leave
reminding
off?
me to talk about Danny and Melissa and why wouldn't God choose us to have gone through that? And here's the deal. We did go through it. And so we just wanted our lives to be able to hopefully honor God and go through it the best way we could, right? But as I say that, I remember kind of scattered, just going, where do we start, babe? But let's go to the night that you brought him to me. Corban had woke up and you couldn't get him back to sleep and he was kind of fussy. And so just to put everyone in the mindset, we had gotten him out of ICU and our goal was to keep him at home as long as he would live and not to take him back to ICU to put him back on life support. So however long his days were going to be lived out, that was going to be his life. And we were going to accept that, right? And so you brought him to me that night. Long story short, I was holding Corban when he breathed his last breath. Up until that point, the prayer had been, God, please save his life, keep him here. And I remember, told you this, there's no way to describe this moment unless you've been in the moment. So there was no panic, there was no freak out. And people talk again about shock. I feel like I was acutely just so aware and so focused and so alive and alert, if you will, in that moment with Corban. But when that last long breath was breathed, I remember thinking, this is it. This is God's answer for his life. And in that moment, if there is an ushering of the soul out and the container that's left behind is void, if you will, of that soul, I felt that. In this immediate prayer, instead of, hey, keep him here, it was, whoa, can I go take me with him, take me with him. I just felt this utter peace and that Corban was now in the arms of Jesus and I was going to see him again one day and I kind of wanted to be there, wherever that is. Of course, did CPR, called 911 and did all that, but without a frantic, stressful heart. It was a calm and a peace like we had never experienced. So then we get about the work of grieving the loss of our son that we felt was, as I said last time, his symptoms had come on with a vengeance. And so we knew unless God, again, extended his life like we had seen him do before and take away the symptoms, it was going to be sooner than later. So even though I go back to where Danny and Melissa were saying, why God, why God? We prayed that. We thought that. We wondered that. And it wasn't like, oh, we're going to honor God with this. Once the reality of losing our son hit, then we get into grief. And there's so much we could talk about here. I just want to say we understand lights out depression. My give a crap broke. My world is over. How in the world are we going to navigate parenting this 5-year-old and this 3-year-old? I mean, it was over. And there was nothing we could do. And I'll just say, maybe begin with the end and then we can come back and fill in some details. When you're dead, like dead man walking, you can't revive yourself. And I'm not talking about Corban now. I'm talking about me. And I just remember thinking, we're screwed. My kids are screwed. They're going to end up in someone's couch in counseling. So 3 years later, after an intense period of grief, a profoundly life-changing period of grief, God did come, and again, that force, that presence, that spirit outside of us had to do CPR on me, had to breathe new life into me. So, it's someone else grabbing the paddles and saying, clear, so, to get my heart beating again. And that happened. So there's nothing we could have done or chosen to do. That sounds too, if you will, pious for me to say we were honored to have been chosen and we went through this to honor God. Hey, the fact that we were breathing in, breathing out was a miracle, and it was a testament to God. The fact that we remained married when 85% of couples divorce after losing children, and we know why. We saw what happens. You grieve your way, I grieve mine. The irritation sometimes of me wanting to be private and you wanting to be public, you being more extroverted, me being more introverted, us not allowing the space for the difference in grief. Me thinking you're kind of weird, or again, you kind of getting irritated at me. And when we finally just allowed each other to be and to grieve how we needed to grieve, that was when the healing, I think, began. People say time heals, and I say, no, it doesn't. Time is just more time to be sick. Time is just more time to hurt. Healing heals. Grieving heals. So we had to do the work. Good night. I can maybe talk about it now, but I'm certainly no expert just because we went through it, and grief's a weird thing. So, talk to me about that time in your life, babe, in our lives, just what you kind of remember, the lowlights, if you will.
First thing I thought of when you kind of started telling right after Corban passed, some of the things that I remember, it's almost like you're moving in slow, like it's like what? It's kind of just an out of body experience. So I remember when they took him from the house to the hospital, which I'm like, okay, first of all, we have the DNR, don't do that. So I'm like, we're not paying that bill, the transport, because we knew he was already gone. So we knew that like it was done. But I remember being at the hospital, and it was March 17th. And I had a trip planned the next day to go to Canton, a fun little shopping place.
Depends
with
on
my
how
friend.
you
Not
how you
fun for
define
you.
fun. If God says there is a literal hell, it
That's
would
it.
be sending me to Kenton for
So
eternity.
Michelle Cole and I had made this fun thing. It was her birthday the next day. So we had made this big trip to go on. And I remember standing there going, okay, we need to call my parents. It's so early. This is not going to be a good day, a good way to wake them up. Then I remember thinking, I've got to call and talk to Michelle. But two things that ran through my mind, her birthday's tomorrow, and this is going to ruin her birthday. And number two, I wonder if we could still go on our trip, because there's not much that we need to be doing
Oh my
right now
gosh.
until, like, literally the shock is so real. What happens, I wasn't like running around frantic, but I was in denial.
Yeah, that was very
So that was
palpable in you.
That was a weird time.
Well,
So,
first, you thinking about Michelle and putting her first in her birthday.
Sure.
That's you. That's
Yeah.
the two in you. And then the can we still make our trip? That is the denial that I've seen kick in.
Yeah.
When your water breaks and we're going to the hospital and you're in labor and you're about to do laundry.
I have
It's like,
things
I've
to
gotta-
do. I got
Yeah.
things to do. Okay. So anyway, so then fast forward, I just remember as the grief set in and the reality of what has just truly happened, just trying to come to grips with it. And for a long time, time is nothing. I don't even know how long any of this lasted. And that's why it's important to journal, because I can go back and I can read some journals and that can give me some time marks. But it all is such a blur after something like this. I have no clue. But I just remember for a long time trying to save my own life. I felt like somebody who has just fallen out, like when you're doing the roaring rapids and you're thrown from the life raft and you're just fighting to keep your head above water and grasping for limbs and branches and whatever else to try to save your life. I remember walking through life like that for a long time. And what I mean by that is I'm like, the way that I'm feeling sucks. Just the hole that it left inside of me. My bent was not just to stay in bed and pull the covers over my head, which that's where some people go in depression and dealing with grief. The way that I dealt with it is do more of what normally would be healthy choices. So if I just drink more water, if I sign up to teach another Bible class, if I just wake up a little earlier and have my quote unquote quiet time. I'm not a runner.
But I'm going to start getting up at 5:30 and running. I'm like, are you insane?
I used to run in junior high and high school sprinting, but I never loved distance running at all. But I thought, you know what? Running is a healthy choice. So like, I'm not a runner right now, and I don't wake up in the 5s, and I was waking up in the 5s to run. All of these things that I'm doing that you're like, okay, that's great. That's healthy. Start running. Awesome. Start waking up early. But what I was doing, that I was so out of balance. And so what I was doing was everything that I could possibly do to hang on and find any shred of life and work my way out of this feeling. Luckily, I don't think we had the internet there then, did we? It wasn't so much like add to cart. I'm sure you're like, thank you, Jesus, because if we had Amazon back then, there would have been many, many more boxes on the porch.
Well, there was a thing called the internet. You just weren't going ham on Amazon, thank God.
So just shopping and staying gone away from the house a lot, because the house was a reminder of where Corban was. And so anything attached to that, like, get the heck out of Dodge. So I just look back and I think, man, I was running scared. And not until you and I had a knockdown, drag out fight, and you said to me, you need some help. You need to get help, which sounds like, wow, that was cold and harsh, but you had every right. You know, you were in the same boat as me. You had just lost a son. And so after months and months and months of watching me just spin out, we were in some argument over something. And I just remember you saying, you need to get help. And it was like a freezing cold pitcher of water poured over my head. And I'm like, first of all, I was mad. And I was like, I'll show you, I'll get help. So I slept on the couch and I called the first counselor I could think of the next morning and made an appointment to get in. And it's like, I knew that I needed it, but also I was kind of doing it just to spite you.
Of
like,
course.
okay, I'll show you that I'm going to get some help. I'll show you I'll get help.
That hasn't been a pattern in our entire marriage.
I did. And what the counselor helped me kind of uncover that day was, he said something about, after trying to give me some ideas of ways to cope. And I was like, listen, Doc, I get what you're saying. And you're the one with all the letters behind your name. So I'm not trying to tell you your business. But what you're telling me about have a date night with your husband or take one room a day if you feel overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, listen,
Get some vitamin D, get outside, exercise.
I get all that here in my brain, but I cannot feel it in my heart.
Can't get it from the gut.
There is a disconnect is what I'm trying to tell you. So whatever your term is for that, that's what I have. And so he said, well, I think you are clinically depressed.
That's called clinical depression. That's the term.
And so I said, I don't feel like I'm depressed. I don't know. And he said, well, depression looks different in different people. So that was a very eye-opening for me, that it didn't just look like sleeping all day and never showering. It can look like that, but it can also look like trying to run for your life to outrun the pain. He said, Jamie, you have got to stop and let that pain catch up to you and let it begin its work in you. Let it process through you. And I'm like, well, is this part of the process? Like, how do I know when I'm doing this healthily and when I'm not? And honestly, just stopping to talk to a person from the outside looking in was very helpful, because he could look and say, it's not.
Can I ask you a question? Would you say, when I use this word pride, we've talked about our pride, our stubbornness, but would you say that there was an element of your kind of Christian, spiritual pride? Like God has somehow done this miraculous work through Corban's life and even his death. It was so public and so was almost like he became this celebrity. And that's, again, there's so much around that. Us being on the James Robinson show and us sharing the song Broken Wings that I wrote, which was just basically my blubbering, crying prayer that I wrote about 11 months after he passed. How much of it was that you think it was that spiritual pride, if you will?
I definitely think there's a lot of that in there. And I teach a class, and the class that I taught last week, we talked about this. I said there was a lot of that because when I went to see that counselor and he began to talk about medicine, I was like, whoa, like I don't love to take medicine. I don't really go to doctors. That's just not my jam. When he talked about how antidepressants could really be helpful. And so I began that whole journey of like almost everyone I knew, friends, family, everyone were on some kind of antidepressant, some kind of medicine. And I truthfully in my heart felt like, good for y'all. You go. That's awesome that you're open to that kind of help. Let it work for you, you know? Well, then when it was prescribed for me, it became a whole new ball game. I was so non-judgmental towards anybody else, but then whenever I turned inward, I'm like, come on, get your shizzle together. What's wrong with you, Jamie? Come on, you can do this. Work harder. Just trust God more, or just give me a little more time, and I think I can beat this.
You just described the human condition. That's all of us. We do not judge others, but then we turn it in and we judge ourselves that way.
I was
Isn't that
so
interesting?
critical of myself. And so whenever he said, I think there was a part of me that believed like, what if I tried this? What if I could just stop and let this catch up to me? And could I handle it? What would that look like? But it took me a minute. I think I called 3 different people after I left his office to get a second opinion. None of those were doctors. Well, wait, one was, but he had delivered Carson, our last son. Anyway, I don't remember what it was. Anyway, it had been forever since I dealt with this doctor, but I call him. He's like, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, do you think I need to be on medicine? So the 3 people I called were not even people that needed to be speaking whether I needed to take this medicine, but I wanted to hear the answer. No, you're good. Just keep working a little bit harder. But not one person, every friend, everyone said, I think that might be good for you, Jamie, you know? And so
While I'm secretly cheering on the sidelines.
Yeah. So even my old doctor that I called, he said, Jamie, I know that you're a Christian. I know that you're relying on the power of God in you to help you through this. And so I know you've tried all that you can try. Sometimes I wish other people had other outlets, other things to try besides just turning to medicine. He said, but I know you've tried all those. He said, what if God is trying to teach you in a new and different way? What if you were willing to try to let him? And so I was like, oh, shoot. And I'll tell you, so I did. I took antidepressants for quite a few months. And it wasn't like something that I could tell immediately, like, oh, I'm so happy. My fear was that it was going to push down all of my emotions and that it was that they would one day come back to bite me, or that I would turn into some kind of zombie. They're like, Jamie, it's not like a morphine drip that you're going to be on. Like, it's different. You're picturing like in the 1800s or something, laying there in your bed with it. And so it was.
When in reality, I just want to, throw this in. When your coping mechanisms are used up, they're used up, and you could say they're depleted. Serotonin was depleted, and you needed serotonin. And now, rather than pushing something down, all of a sudden now you have the serotonin. You have some available coping mechanisms, if you will, to allow yourself to feel those feelings and to start grieving.
And so it helped me so much. So now I've even been.
I think your life has saved our marriage. Yeah.
I mean, there have been, I think, even 2 other times since then that I could feel. I mean, that rut. When you're, okay, this isn't just like 2 days. This is turning from 2 days to 2 weeks to 2 months, and time flies when you're having fun. But where you feel like, man, I'm really stuck. And this isn't something where I can do a couple of tweaks. And so I've even gone back on a couple other times since then. And it's not something that I'm ashamed of. It is something that has been proved to be very helpful for me. And so I just remember like one day going out to the car, and I don't remember, it'd been like maybe a few weeks or something since I had started on the meds, but I went out to the car and I remember the colors were brighter. The trees were greener. The grass was greener. The sky was bluer. I was able to like smell and go, like there's an interesting smell out here. And life just turned from gray back to a little bit of color. It was muted at first, but I could see colors and I can smell smells and I was real, like life just emerged in front of me.
Yeah.
And that just became bolder and brighter. Now, was I still extremely sad? Did I cry myself to sleep? None of that was suppressed, but the good in life got better.
Yeah. And I think I waited. Again, depression or grief looks different in everyone. And I was at a different stage. Felt like I was functioning, but at the time wasn't against medication. I was just trying to find the right thing. I guess I tried every substance that was legal. I was just looking for anything that made me feel equipped to move forward and to live life and to be functional and to be not quote happy, but to feel who knows. And literally, so once you've had a huge depression, a clinical depression, I think 75% likely to have other serious bouts of it in your lifetime, maybe repeatedly. And I remember in 2000, I guess 16, 17, going to a doctor and him guessing that I may have, you may have a 20-year depression going on. Like, that's what's been wrong with me. So it's just hard. And people talk about you never get over it. Well, maybe. I don't even know what getting over something like that or closure, is that a made up word? We've just integrated him and that loss into our lives. And we do feel like we're not just surviving, but we're thriving. But when those times happen, when we feel like we're getting under it, we get it, right? We understand what it feels like. And it's a very familiar, well-worn path. I feel like we've left breadcrumbs. We know how to find our way out of that with community support, friends, family, each other, meds, whatever we need, we'll continue to pursue. So people have asked a ton about, did it throw you into a faith crisis, a crisis of belief, a crisis of, did what you believed before about God change during this? I want to talk about that for a few minutes. For me, I think since probably 6th, 7th grade, that's been a very evolving thing in my life. There's nothing feels like it's been static about my belief and my faith. What happened during this time, I felt like it gave me permission to be a lot more honest with myself about what I do believe and don't believe. Not what I'm supposed to believe, but what I actually believe. Like what I'm waiting to experience versus what I'm truly experiencing. And I just let the truth take me where it leads, right? I remember specifically that time where I realized I never said to myself out loud, okay, today I quit praying. Today's the day I stopped praying. I just remember thinking, if God's the God of the sunshine and the rain, the rain falls on the just and the unjust, and God's sovereign, if he's going to do what he's going to do anyway, why waste my breath? Like, I just realized, I haven't prayed. So I've changed my relationship to prayer and what I think about prayer. But it was in that time where I remember, if you can define prayer by talking to God, the first words I spoke to God, I still remember. I was walking around. This was about 3 years, maybe 2.5 years after Corban had passed. Remember, I was walking around Green Valley Elementary across the street from that school at that park over there. And I remember putting my fist up in the air. People talk about shaking their fist at God. Mine was different. I'm not going to talk about what gesture it was or the 2 words that I spoke to God. But I spoke this prayer that would be one of the most blasphemous, heretical, offensive things to speak out loud. And like, if you heard me speak it, you would have run to the other side of the park so as not to be struck by the lightning. And Jamie, that's when the tears started flowing. And that's when the dam broke. And the God, I still remember feeling this massive, huge God with his long arm, like on my forehead, letting me just swing it out, nothing landing, nothing connecting. And then God just saying, okay, you done? Now come here. Like I knew you had that in you. You needed to let me have it. And I got you. It was during those next months and years that I believe my current relationship with, by the way, the God that I do believe exists was forged. That relationship was forged in that fire and with the permission to be honest with myself and with God and not to be afraid that he was going to condemn me to hell for literally being honest, and lost the fear of man and developed this huge awe and reverence and respect for God. And when I say the God that exists, I think I believed in a God before that doesn't exist. So that guy became an atheist, if you will, and I became a new believer in a new God that is currently in my life. And that, if I could just say, when I talk to people, so many Christians are afraid to be honest about what they're truly believing. Peter Rollins says we all have a disavowed level of unbelief. We need to learn to avow what we truly believe, and not like what we've been taught or what we are supposed to believe. Because then you feel incongruent, you feel fraudulent, you're not true to yourself.
Yeah.
And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And you have to get there. Incidentally, during this time, and I want to throw this time frame in here, he was born in 97, passed in 99, and like Jamie said, March 99. And our first public service of Cross Timbers Church was January of 2000. So if you listen to the time frame and how long we said we were in grief, we were literally in the stages of transitioning from our former church to planting Cross Timbers out here in the middle of nowhere, working out of our cars in a barn, Toby and I, having our first public service, and I was leading worship. We've said around here for a long time at Cross Timbers that authenticity, that was just one of our core values. It was just set in the DNA. Toby with his panic and anxiety disorder, and you had me and you in our throes of grief after losing Corban. We didn't hide that. We were going to bring that with us up on stage when we did anything public. And I remember leading worship. We were actually at one of our sister churches at the time that was in relationship with us, and they asked me to come up and share. I remember literally sitting at the piano, and I started trying to speak, and I couldn't. And I just sat there and cried for about 5 minutes. And when I say that, that's a long time, like 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Set your watch. And I remember feeling no hurry and no need to prop myself up or to apologize. This is the community we were in, and we were just going to let it be. Again, it may have been horrific for everyone else, but I just remember feeling really safe there. And then I remember whatever I was going to play, I started playing that Michael W. Smith song, part of that trilogy on one of his records which is throwback, Michael W. Smith, right? But it was called Breathe in Me.
Mm-hmm.
You breathe in me and I'm alive. By the power of your holiness, you breathe in me and you revive feelings in my soul that I've laid to rest.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes on, look up the lyrics. And I just sat there and cried my way through that song. But I want to say, so this was the DNA that was set in the early days of Cross Timbers. And I believe any ministry worth its salt, it's going to be, we are fellow strugglers. We're all broken. We are all in need of grace, all in need of a savior. There's no us and them. It's all us. And people say, when were you saved? I'm like, which time, right? This is the best thing we can ever do, is open doors and lock arms with other people saying, man, I have nothing if not for the power of God in me. In my weakness, your power is manifest. Your strength is manifest in my weakness. Like I have nothing. I literally have nothing. It's not like a little bit of me and then you, thank God, you make up the slack. It's like you're everything. And when you can start there, and that's who you are, and that's how you relate to people, that's who you're going to attract, that's who will come. No judgment, no shame. We just know where the healer is. And so let's all just, belly up to the bar and get the healing together, right?
It's funny that you would tell that story, the story of Cross Timbers, because just yesterday I was teaching our Start Here class with my friend Misty. And it's, the welcome class where people who can come and hear a little bit more about the heart and the history, the mission, the vision, and how to get connected. So I kind of start out the beginning telling about where we were when we first started and how our brokenness and our messiness kind of opened the doors to invite people in to bring their broken and their messy, and they were met with welcome home. And how I believe, even though, times change and lots of stuff changes over the years, I still believe that that is who we are at our core, is a church that welcomes people home, the hurting and the broken, and let's help to find healing, freedom for them. And so anyway, so I kind of started out that class talking a little bit about the history, because I think that's important to connect these people back here brand new to the Argyle area. It's just cool. They kind of can hear where we came from. But at the very end, so they've already kind of heard about Corban. And then at the very end, a sweet girl, really young, probably in her 20s, she said, we opened it up for Q&A, and she said, yeah, I have a question. What do y'all believe about healing? I was like, wow, that's a loaded question. And so it was really funny kind of what came out of me in that moment with her. And I think because I had already connected them to the story of us losing a kid. And so I said, well, that kind of sounds like a loaded question, and I said, I'm interested to see where that question is coming from in you. We don't probably have time to do that, but I kind of went on to say, we believe that God heals. We believe that he's the great physician and that he hasn't lost his touch. And we are going to pray for people and believe for God to heal. And also we keep our hands pretty open with that. This is what we are asking for, God, for you to heal, whether it be spiritually, physically, emotionally, whatever. But also it's your will, not ours. Because what we have found, if you just are asking me my opinion, yes, God does heal. But does he heal physically every time? Like, we did everything we thought, and you shared this, I think, the last episode, everything we could possibly do to pray this kid be healed. We crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's, and the answer was no. And so, yes, absolutely, we believe God heals. And also, we have experienced when the answer is not yes, when it's not just, yes, pray for this person and they get well. So it shaped a lot of our theology. It's a lot of what we share with people. And so I'm like, whoo, I think that blew her dress up, and probably all of them. But there were a lot of tears during that time of the class, just because I think that connected with a lot of people there. When we share from what we've learned, what we've experienced, where we've found freedom, that opens the door for other people to say, hey, I can identify with that. Like, you just gave me permission to maybe say something out loud that I've never said before. What do we feel? What do we believe when we've prayed really super hard for something and God didn't heal that person?
Yeah.
That can change you.
The disappointment, the confusion. Did I hear from God? Have I ever heard from God? And let me just say this, because you said this, shaped our theology. And I'm just going to go on record right here as saying my favorite 3 words when it comes to this conversation are, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, I think, have trouble with that. And when I said I lost the fear of man during this, and I'm just going to be honest, when I know God knows my heart and he knows I'm just a human and I'm just questioning, the opposite of faith is not doubt. The opposite of faith, if you talk to a first century, like a rabbi, they would say that the opposite of faith would be certitude, being certain. And we think we're getting some brownie points. The more certain we are, the more faithful we are. And God's so proud of us. No, it's the belief and the unbelief. It's the knowing and unknowing. It's the wrestling with God. That's faith. And I'm just telling you, I wrestle with all this. And I love talking with people who have these questions. So what do you, quote, believe? Essentially, what do you believe? What does that even mean? It's like, I'm going to agree with something. And why? Why do you agree with something that maybe you don't know? Mm-hmm. And where I am with all this, did God do this? Did he allow it? Did Satan do it? Did you not have enough faith? Well, what about this when it does and he doesn't? And, well, he healed, but it's a different kind of healing. And who knows? Mm-hmm. I could come up with something and say, okay, I believe this because it makes me feel better or more in control. But where I've gotten is, man, these are great questions, and I don't know. And what I've found is when people get to sit with someone else who can say, man, I don't know, but this sucks and it's hard and I'm so sorry, but I'm going to pull up a chair and I'm going to take communion with you and I'm going to say, I'm so sorry and we'll get through this together. I think that's the body of Christ, being the body of Christ.
Mm-hmm. I emailed the girl from the class because I was like, shoot, I wonder if I just left her with, like, I opened up a can of worms and she wasn't really she just needed a simple answer. So I emailed her back and said, hey, it was great meeting you. You know, I'm thinking about you and your question about healing, and I'd love to discuss it more. I just wanted to sit beside you today and talk more, but that would have just left the whole rest of the class out, LOL. Let me know if you'd be open to talking sometime. I'd love to hear more about your question and your thoughts. And she said, hey, Jamie, I really appreciated your honesty and transparency today in answering my question. It means a lot when I'm at a church where I'm able to ask questions and be met with authenticity and vulnerability. I would love to meet sometime and talk more. And I'm always open to coffee shop chats.
Boom.
And so it was just...
Well, that's perfect. There it is.
I'm excited to meet
Jamie
with her and just find out more, like, where did that question come from?
Another bestie.
And
yes, and you will. And you're going to bond in that heart that didn't have to be right or know or have it all figured out. Now you're going to give her space to grow and to wrestle and to have a connection with someone else who's still breathing in, breathing out, not medicated into oblivion and still seeking God with, her next breath. So that we're going to wrap today on that. And so our part 6, it sounds like next week, part 6 will be our final chapter for now on marriage, on this little marriage series. And I love the way it turned into 6 parts. But we're going to go post, if you will, Corban, post grief and how we got through that. And then the rest of our marriage, how we moved on from that and how that brought us closer together. And how we were able to, and I'll just a little teaser, how we were able to see each other as different human beings and value those differences, not just tolerate them or think they're weird, not tolerate them. But to,
you are weird, but...
And you are very, very crazy. But how we literally started to value those differences and respect this person as another unique individual. And again, the teaser is, become curious about this new person. Life has happened. We're evolving. We're changing. The girl I married hadn't had children, hadn't lost a child, hadn't been through this incredibly, profoundly life-changing thing. And so I get to know the new girl. I need to find out who is Jamie now and be curious and learn to love that person. And so that's the way you do it. And so, look forward to part 6 and wrapping this series. Until then, be well, everybody. We love you guys. James, thank you. That was awesome.
Love you, babe. Love you guys. Thanks for joining us.